For some time now, there has been a lot of interest around a brand new Star Wars title that Respawn Entertainment, the creators of Titanfall and Apex, have been working on. A few months ago, we got a really good idea of what the game was about via a really pretty cinematic trailer, but with no actual gameplay footage in there, we couldn't really properly gauge how the game was going to play, just a few details, until now. Yesterday at EA Play, we finally got treated to nearly 14 minutes of Jedi Fallen Order gameplay, and it looks interesting. So the game is set post Order 66, so after episode 3 when the Jedi were all being hunted down and eliminated, and we play as a new character in the canon Star Wars universe called Cal Kestis, and he is no longer a Padawan, but he's not a full Jedi either, I guess somewhere in between. And he's lucky, he survived Order 66, he's a bit street smart, and he's been living under the radar. Somehow, Palpatine has not got his filthy mitts on him yet, so we don't really know how Cal has survived this long, but he has. I'm sure we'll learn about that when we get our hands on the game. And interestingly, Cal is played and motion captured, acted by Cameron Monaghan, who you may have seen in Shameless and Gotham. So we know that at least in the beginning of the game, Cal is working for a scrapper guild pulling apart capital ships from the Clone Wars, and when the gameplay starts we get to see that we're around 3 hours into the game and we're on Kashyyyk, the planet of the Wookiees, and Cal is on a mission here to restart the Jedi Order, but he needs the Wookiees' help. Sadly though, the Wookiees have been enslaved by the Empire, who are up to all sorts of bad and nasty things on the planet. And when it kicks off, we get to see a cutscene between Cal and none other than Forrest Whitaker, who is reprising his role as Saw Gerrera. If you've been watching the more recent films, Saw featured in Rogue One, and he also appeared in the animated series The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. It's really cool to see him have a presence in the game here, and it also solidifies this game as Star Wars canon. I know that means quite a lot to people. So this game will fit into the Star Wars timeline and presumably feature a few surprise characters that we may be familiar with along the way. I'm going to call it, but I think that we might see Darth Maul popping up along the way. I'd love that. Now before we talk about the actual gameplay, let's talk about Cal's companion. Would any Star Wars game or movie these days be complete without any sort of cute looking droid? Probably not. This time around, the droid that helps Cal is called BD-1, and it actually stands for Buddy Droid 1. And that's not me just making that up either. Of course, the game is being made by Respawn, and they made an utterly brilliant single player campaign in Titanfall 2, where of course you were supported by BT-7274, and he was your Titan throughout the game, and they really made BT work. So with this sort of experience, I'm expecting big things and some heartstring pulling moments from BD-1. But BD is not just there for visuals. He can help you scan environments during story missions and even help you find juicy lore. He can slice or hack terminals, unlock doors, and even eject stim packs to you when you're running low on health, and we did see that a couple of times during the game. You've got a limited amount of stim packs that you can use when you're in trouble. BD can throw you on, of course assuming that you have some left, but you're left vulnerable for a few seconds when using them. But you can find these more as you play the game. So what about that gameplay then? Well, I think first of all this is definitely an action adventure game, and it's definitely been influenced by a ton of games that have come before it. I think there's a good mix of combat here, but also traversal through the level. It felt very Uncharted at times. Cal can use rope swings to get across hard to reach areas, as well as climbing grates. Those pesky Empire builders didn't really think their designs through very well. And of course, with this being a Respawn game, there's wall running. What did you expect? So what about bad guys then? Well, there are plenty direct from the Star Wars lore here, and ones that have been introduced for this game. In the gameplay, we see Cal facing off against stormtroopers, scout troopers, and even a new purge trooper. There are giant spider insects, I don't know what they're calling these at the moment. During the first trailer, we also got to see an Inquisitor called the Second Sister, who is hunting Cal down. And she happens to be the second highest ranking Inquisitor at the time, so she is going to be pretty tough. And there are a couple of occasions in the gameplay that we get to see Cal fighting a purge trooper in tight corridors, and this gets us moving nicely onto combat. So the usual stormtroopers, well, We see in the gameplay Cal disposing of these quite easily using a combination of force pull, push abilities, just general lightsaber swinging, and they go down quite easily. And the combat revolves, it seems, around blocking, parrying and deflecting, all using your lightsaber, of course. With that you're able to dodge and jump to avoid any incoming damage. And when it comes to the enemies, they may be firing blasters at you, or they may be running at you with double extended electrofield staffs. It really will be a mixed bag. I think we got to see maybe 3 or 4 different enemy types in this gameplay. But when Cal was fighting the Purge Trooper, they seem to have more set moves, a bit of a mini boss, and there definitely seemed to be more skill involved and timing in the combat. It did seem to have a Sekiro style combat with a parry meter on the enemies going down with multiple blocks and strikes before you can open up and do some real damage. And yes, we got to see force pull, push, but used not only in combat but also moving throughout the world. Cal can use force push to get through a blocked doorway. He also has a force powerful flip and a double jump, as well as a more unique ability to slow someone or something down. If you've seen The Force Awakens, if you're watching this video, I guess you probably have, you will remember the iconic scene near the start of the movie where Kylo Ren freezes a blaster shot in mid-air. It's a bit like that. So Cal can use this to basically stun enemies or hold them in place while he micromanages or just takes them out, but he can also use it to stop obstacles that he may need to progress through the world. There is a really great scene in the gameplay where Cal freezes an enemy with the blaster shot that he fired frozen in time, and then using force pull to pull the enemy through his own frozen blaster shot. It looked brilliant, very cool, and it was a great way of showing how you can combine abilities together. As you play the game, you'll earn skill points for combat, and I presume you'll then use the skill points to upgrade or perhaps learn new abilities as you go. And the footage we got to see, like I said, it's only around 3 hours into the game, so I'm guessing there'll probably be a lot more to learn and unlock early on. Although I have to say that usually for these type of early gameplay videos, they do ramp the skills of the character up to just demonstrate what will be possible in the game. It did feel like Cal was quite powerful here, but maybe that's just what they're going for. It's a bit of a Jedi sandbox. In terms of visuals, I thought the game looked nice, but it did feel as though there was a bit of a blur to it, and some of the lighting and shadows were kind of flat. Certain things didn't look quite good too. I think the Wookiees that we saw, well, really, they just didn't stand up to everything else in the footage. They looked a bit odd, and I guess that these are just the alpha models, so I hope that they can be improved. After all, we do know that Jedi Fallen Order is not running on the Frostbite engine, which may come as a shock to people because of EA's association with Respawn. Respawn instead are using Unreal Engine 4 to power this game, and I'm sure that they have their reasons for that. Frostbite is not the be and end all of engines, of course, but there are a few places, especially I think with facial detail, where I think this could look better. And the thing with the shadows too, it certainly looked flat at times. Again, this is early alpha footage, so I don't think that we can be overly picky with what we see, although the game is coming out in November, but this footage could be a few months old, we don't know. I did like the HUD though, or lack of, actually. It was quite minimal, which I'm personally a big fan of. Makes it way more cinematic. Now, wrapping things up, I think there'll be quite a few comparisons to Force Unleashed when it comes to Jedi Fallen Order, and some people might see that as a bad thing, but I don't think that you should. It definitely gave me those kind of vibes. 15 minutes I think is enough to get a feel for the combat and how the game will play, but as expected, Respawn are keen to keep as much of this game private and avoid spoilers to just make the game more of a surprise when it comes out. I don't think they're going to show an awful lot because at the end of the day they'll want to keep the story and the big gameplay beats as secret as much as possible. With that in mind, I think that when it comes to this one, you're going to have to make a decision without an awful lot of gameplay to go on. You'll have to decide if this type of single player melee game is for you, and if a story driven Star Wars game is something that you want, because this game is purely single player. There will be no multiplayer, so it leaves the team to focus entirely on putting together the best possible crafted experience that they can for a Star Wars campaign. After all, I think if you want a multiplayer Star Wars game, you've got that with Battlefront 2. Although I think Fallen Order is definitely bringing something different to the table. It's a fully crafted single player experience that takes inspiration from other great games around it, seemingly merged with an engaging story but with solid melee gameplay mechanics. If it all works well together, it could be a fantastic and memorable game. I don't think 15 minutes of gameplay is all that long to judge a game on, but we don't have to wait all that long because the game does release this November 15th. And that's all for today, guys. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.